Hi guys, Jonathan here for Guitar Interactive Magazine. We are at the Keeping the Blues Alive Mediterranean cruise here with Charlie Starr from Blackberry Smoke. How you doing today, buddy?
Doing fantastic. You?
Yeah, I'm well. Great for seeing you, and we can't wait to see you guys hit the stage. It's always great to see you hit the stage, but this is going to be something very special here in this incredible environment.
Yeah.
You know, preparation for a show like this. I mean, you know, you've played some crazy places, but this is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, we're cruise veterans. We've done, this is the 20th.
Is it really?
Since the first cruise we did was in 2007. And yeah, we did all the Leonard Skinner hosted cruises, which started in 2007 and went, I think, 10 years. But then this company's Sixth Man, who puts this on, they're based in Atlanta, and they did the Rock Boat with Sister Hazel and Kid Rock and Zach Brown. And so we've done, I sound like a six-man commercial, but we've done about 20 of their cruises. But as you'll see up on that top deck, it's basically a wind tunnel. So
preparation for a show, obviously, as you mentioned, you know, you're very well experienced in it, and I'm definitely going to be diving into some things that have gone wrong, because there must have in 20 shows and in the environment. But what's preparation like for a show like this in comparison with just a regular show?
Not really different. Just everybody plays a certain time limit, and that's a thing. But it's great, and the bands here are fantastic. And I saw Kenny Wayne Shepherd last night. He was great. I'm looking forward to seeing so many people. I'm jet lagged a bit because this is the first time we flew to Europe to get on a boat.
Sure.
So I wanted to see Eddie Ninevolt last night, and I fell asleep.
Man, it was something else as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously going to be playing again.
He's an Atlanta guy too, so
yeah,
and,
for
I've
sure.
never seen him or met him, and I think Benji, my buddy, sat in with him last night. But I want to see the Cardinal Black.
So you're a fan of Chris, yeah?
King Chris. Oh my God, and he and I are Instagram friends, and I actually ran into him in the cafeteria yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's like seeing an old friend, even though we've never met.
He's such a lovely guy, and you know, a great friend of the magazine. He's done stuff for us over the years, and it's incredible to see his success. And every time we're talking with people, Chris's name comes up, you know, because you know, you talk about keeping the blues alive, and of course that is kind of the that's the lifeblood. That's new people coming up. Obviously you've got the fantastic guys like yourself that have got so much success, but unless you've got the new guys coming up that are, you know, exciting you and exciting the fans, it's like it dies out, doesn't it? You know, so it's great to see that he's doing something fresh.
He's like, to me, and I've only seen him, this will be the first time I get to see him live, but just watching his playing online, and he's so emotive, just so much emotion in the way he plays the guitar. It's like, I could care less how fast you can play. It's people like him. I'm like, that guy is singing to me with his playing. That's the true. I mean, playing fast is great too, but when people like him, and I mean, and Kenny and Joe and Derek Trucks and Warren Haynes and these people who can speak to your heart with the guitar, that's the shit.
It's always felt like that with you guys right from the get-go, that, you know, you don't put anything out that doesn't feel like it's just basically, you know, putting on a Blackberry Smoke record, it's like it's just full of love in a way, you know, love for music, and you feel that vibe all the way through. Can you talk to me about the first time you were moved by hearing some music?
Oh, well, yeah, my dad he's a guitar player, bluegrass country guitar player, singer, not a lead player. But just as he would play and sing songs, just him and his guitar for me, and there was and he would play these old murder ballads, these old tragedy songs. There's one called "The Wreck of the Old 97" that's a story about a train crash.
All right.
And that one, I'll get goosebumps thinking about it. I wanted to hear it again and again and again, like, because I'm like, that story, I could see it, you know. And there's one called "The Knoxville Girl," which is really a brutal song. It's about a guy who kills his girlfriend because she won't marry him, And it's an old Celtic ballad that made its way over. That's the beautiful thing about bluegrass music and mountain music in Appalachia, is it all came from the UK. These fiddle tunes and the stories came from Celtic tradition.
Sure.
And then that got mixed up with when, you know, African people coming over and they're bringing their music, which sort of gets intermingled with these Celtic stories also. And then that's when you get two different versions of a song, like Sitting on Top of the World. You get a bluegrass version and a blues version.
Sure.
It's two different cultures, but they love this storytelling.
Yeah. And they've both got that similar story to tell, but through a different lens.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
You know, but other people can relate to it.
Yeah.
You know, like no matter where you're from, you know, it's such a universal language. Now, it's really interesting hearing you talk about that, and it fascinates me asking great artists like you about that emotional reaction from an early age, because I always find that, especially the ones, you know, sometimes there's some people after a while, after a few decades or whatever, you can tell that they kind of go through the motions and they're not really, you know, we're not going to name any names, but sometimes put records out and it's a bit forgettable. You know, with you guys, you can always tell that you're just not going to bother putting something out unless it means something. And I wonder, do you use that, you know, the goosebumps that you just got there, is that the sort of thing that you can tell when something's good or not, even to this day when you're writing about that reaction from those early days?
Yeah, I guess it's different, the way that something will excite you. You know, it could be a riff or the way that the kick drum feels in a song, or just the way that you know, there's so many musicians who could go and make a record alone.
All right.
Like, and that's cool. But the magic to me from being in a band comes from these different sets of hands and feet that are and brains that are putting this together, and everybody plays their instrument differently, and it's just it's like a soup.
Yeah.
And when the soup is good, it's I'm just speaking for my own band, but we know when the soup is good. It's like, okay, that's ready.
Yeah.
That feels right. Other times it's playing like, okay, well, that doesn't feel great. Next song.
Yeah, of course. Now, we're 20 years on, unbelievably, from, you know, Bad Luck Ain't No Thing. I mean, just reflecting on that debut, I mean, obviously it's got to be a very sort of special time for you and the band and coming up. But, you know, just reflecting on it now, what are some of your memories of that time?
Oh, well, that record I can remember not having enough songs, because I had really just started to write songs. I had been a guitar player who played with people who wrote songs. So by the time we made that record, we made it with Jesse Dupree, an Atlanta friend who has the band Jackal. And he said, "You got 6 songs here that you've written. You got some more?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you got to go write some more, because that's not enough for an album." And so I remember, and he joked about it and said, "This is where the pressure comes in on a songwriter. You got to be prepared as a songwriter in the band to write enough songs for a record every year, you know." And I was young. I was only 22 years old, maybe. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was like, can I pick a couple of covers to help lighten my burden? So we did Freeborn Man, which is an old song, and then Another Chance, which is a Dan Baird song. But that I remember being that's the first time I ever felt pressure. But then since then I've never had a problem. It's just always, you know, we don't release 2 albums a year, so
sure,
there's always some time to write the song.
It's incredible when you think about it, you know, being that young, and it's the time to do it, of course, you know what I mean, when, you know, because you know, you're so motivated, and like the idea of like sleeping in a camper van, or you know, like you don't care, you know, you're coming up and it's going well. But you know, when you think about like artists of the the 60s and 70s, like so many of them were like, 17, 18, 19, when you're like thinking Led Zeppelin or Free or whatever, and these guys, being really prolific at such an early age, and you're talking there about the challenges of that, like you had it down, but you were still like, shit, I don't think I'd be able to do 2-3 albums a year. What do you think about like that? It seems to be such a special time where there was that period where so many people were able to just fire out so much quality, and now it's a bit more few and far between, isn't it?
Yeah, where did it go?
Yeah.
I think that was such a magical time, and a lot of those ideas that kind of shaped the landscape of rock and roll, it's hard to get better than that. I know that sounds silly and almost simple, but it's like, how are you gonna come up with something that's better than that Zeppelin song in this genre with this feel? Like, I don't know, that seems kind of limiting too, but it is sort of like, sometimes you look at it and think, well, they used up all the good shit, but definitely not, but music is all, it's almost like cooking. Like if you take a recipe from Vietnam, and you take these ingredients, whether it be potatoes and pork and some rice, and you cook it with these certain spices, and it's delicious. But then let's say you go over to Yugoslavia and you have the same ingredients, and you change the spices around a little bit, change the cooking technique around a little bit. It's different, but it's still delicious. So it comes with different human beings. They're the way that they play a riff in E, as opposed to Jimmy Page,
Sure.
So it can go on forever, because there are enough combinations of notes in the spectrum to where you don't have to absolutely repeat yourself ever.
Of course. And the process for writing a song these days for you, how has that changed?
It's really, technology helps a lot.
Okay.
Because I can see, I remember, I have tons of demos even on cassettes from back when I was younger, that it would just be myself and an acoustic guitar. Maybe I did buy a 4-track, and back then a Fostex cassette 4-track.
Sure, yeah.
But now I can I can create a fully realized demo of a song with drums and keys and bass and hand claps and percussion and background vocals, and that's a lot of fun. And on the last record, Dave Cobb said, "Stop doing that." Then we just finished a new album. Well, actually, it's been finished a while. It'll be released.
Brilliant. I was going to ask him. I'm always wanting to hear some new stuff. Of course.
He said, "Stop making a demo and just do it old school. Just get your acoustic guitar and come in here and go, hey man, this is how the song goes, and let's capture everyone's reaction."
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And I said, that is a really cool. That's an older school way to do it, because now everyone does what I just said. They make these elaborate demos, and it's like, okay, here's exactly how it goes. Here's how your part goes. Here's how your part goes. And where's the fun in that?
Yeah, no, that of course. I mean, that's the thing. You can imagine, you're building a system of reactions, as you say, and then all these pieces all come together to make sometimes to create this additional magic that's on top that you wouldn't have got just from and you see it with so many artists. I mean, even some like duos, I don't know, like even like Hall & Oates or whatever, it's kind of like sometimes people would be like, what did the other guy do? But hey, they only had hits when it was the pair of them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean? So.
Well, it makes me think of Pete Townsend when he was. There's a classic albums episode.
All right, yeah,
of Who's Next, and it's what's his name? What's the brilliant engineer?
Eddie Kramer?
No, Glenn Johns.
Oh yeah.
So he says we're getting the band together, and they're going to start to record these songs that would become Who's Next. And he said Pete has these incredible demos that he recorded by himself at his house, and I'm like, how the hell am I going to beat that? But he said, but then the magic came when those other dudes picked up their instruments and started to play the songs, and they had not tied themselves to those demos. They were like, well, I'm going to play this the way I feel it. And he said Pete doesn't play the bass like John Entwistle, so it was completely different.
Of
and
course.
Then, and obviously the drums, like
No.
Mooney. But yeah, there's, I don't know. Sometimes my long-winded point is that sometimes technology can get in the way. If you let it, it can aid songwriting because you can really fully realize an idea. But you can't let it dominate it, because then you can lose some magic.
For sure. I mean, just on that thread, with technology, because these days, obviously, you can just search for anything on YouTube, Spotify, or whatever. You can hear all different types of musics. Fantastic, like that you can get exposed to it. But, that way, even some of the people that we were talking about, and you yourself, when you were coming up, you had probably just a few less influences going on. Do you know what I mean? Because it was only maybe the records you could afford, or stuff that you'd been able to hear or be exposed to, and you didn't have it all just at your fingertips. And
That's
I think
right.
that seems to be a way of actually focusing your own journey. But sometimes it's easy to get distracted. Actually, I'm kind of interested in jazz now, and I'm also a little bit interested in what's going on here with this shred thing, and I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in that. And then you can't find your lane.
Yeah.
You got any opinions on that? Do you think it's good to be as wide as you can, or actually trying to be focused down a little bit more with just a few influences?
I don't know. That's a great point. I guess that's debatable. I saw an interview with Noel Gallagher, and he says that the level of success that Oasis sort of garnered, or that the level that they reached when they played Nebworth in '95.
It would be 95. Yeah.
And they could have sold out 8 nights if they had wanted to do so, but they wound up playing 2 or 3. And he said, in his opinion, I don't think another band is going to do that, because at that point it was exactly what you said. There was more focus on Oasis than there would have been when there were so many choices for the kid who's got $10, and it's like, I'm going to buy one record today. Which one's it going to be?
Yeah.
It's going to be Oasis, And now with the internet and with streaming, it's just, you got what. But I kind of didn't answer your question.
No, you do in a way, because that's the thing. It's that sometimes I worry that it dilutes music's importance.
Totally.
Because it becomes a thing that you just you put on while you're doing something else.
Right.
You're at the gym, you're cleaning your house, you're whatever, and it's like there was a time where you got a record, and then you were just looking at the cover and just like you sometimes didn't even know what the band would look like.
Totally.
Well,
my buddies and I we knew every name and every detail that was in the liner notes of a record. So we knew where it was recorded, what month it was recorded if it said so, who played what, who wrote what, who produced what, and that's over.
It does seem to be. I mean, going into that though, you mentioned you got some new music, and of course it's important that when you release music, it doesn't just become kind of like just a vehicle to support a tour or whatever.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that people can live with, and the top tracks are different from once you've listened to it 50 times, and all of a sudden like that magic that you get from it. I mean, is that a consideration for you these days when you guys are putting out new music, about how it's consumed?
Yeah, it's. I mean, we realized in our fan base that, much like a lot of people, that we have a lot of vinyl lovers, and so that became a priority, and that started probably 10 years ago, to where it's a real priority. It's like, okay, well, we're going to put more energy into this vinyl version of this album than anything else, with different colored vinyl. And there's been a whole learning curve with people about 180 gram versus the which types of players will work, like your typical Crossley that you buy at Best Buy. It doesn't like 180 gram. They're too heavy, and it'll cause them to skip. And we've all learned this together.
And it's all got to be mastered differently.
That's right. And then we were looking at it like, okay, well, how many songs fit on a side, and what do we want side B to start with? And that even affects the running order now, which that's rewinding to the 60s and 70s. Like, okay, well, what song starts side 2?
But that's back to limitations again.
That's beautiful.
That's back to the limitations.
Yeah.
Like in that same way that you can't have it all. Like if you can, Spotify or whatever, you can have you could put out an album with 1,000 tracks.
Yeah.
If you want, but it's like it's funny how these limitations actually help create magic.
Yeah, it's like even going back to the initial 45 single, the little record. The reason why pop songs were 3 minutes long is because that's what sounded good in that distance.
Sure.
That piece of vinyl can only hold that much music.
Yeah.
So that all of a sudden it's like, well, then that's the rule.
So, what can you tell us about the new record?
It's good, man. I love it. It's raw, and it's once again Dave Cobb produced it. That's about all I can say now.
Okay.
There'll be an announcement coming in the next few days, actually.
Sure, and I'm assuming it's going to be followed with the tour. You're going to be back in the UK?
We will.
Okay. That's very, very exciting. So we've seen you over the years with some incredible instruments, some of these Les Pauls and the Les Paul Juniors and what have you. Anything that's come your way over the last couple of years that you just can't put down?
Well, seems like I'm always finding juniors. They just, I don't know. I might get 5 phone calls a week about where a junior might be.
You've become the guy.
And I love that. And I have a lot of them. And you're hard-pressed to find a dog. Juniors are great. They're simple. They're so simple. There's almost so little going on that it's hard to screw it up. So, but each component in a Les Paul Junior is incredibly important, down to the wiring harness, to the 2 pots and a cap, and it's got to be the right shit, or it's not good.
Yeah.
And each of those components is incredibly important. Anyway, I've found a couple of really great Esquires, another simple instrument, not much going on. And then I spoke with Billy Duffy just recently because I found an early 70s White Falcon, which I know he had early on in the cult.
Of course.
And he actually, I don't know about across the board, but he really likes those Baldwin era White Falcons, the output of the pickups and the feel of the neck, and I got one of the thinner double cutaway stereo Falcons, which he agrees with me. That's ridiculous. That's the most complicated instrument ever. It's like what do all these knobs do?
Especially when you love that simple, one pickup.
Well, I took that thing straight away to the guitar doctor, and I said, "Man, simplify this thing because it really needs to only have, neck pickup, middle position, bridge pickup, volume, tone. That's it."
Yeah, you just like the look and the resonance, and.
But it's amazing that the voice of that guitar is so different from. I mean, they have it's like anything else. It's like a Les Paul compared to a Stratocaster, compared to a Rickenbacker.
Oh, yeah.
It does this thing that's just so special and so specific.
And a lot of the time as well, the tones that people are thinking they're hearing, that way, a lot of the time they'll be thinking, oh, that's a Les Paul tone, that's the best Les Paul tone. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on Joe Bonamassa because this is while we're kind of hearing this, he's driving the boat right now.
Yeah, literally.
But you ask him, the best Les Paul tone, he'll say it's a 335.
That's right.
So it's incredible how people could be focused on like thinking that's the tone. Pick something else up, something that would be different, and that actually might be the real difference maker for you.
Yeah, or Stairway to Heaven, and that's a Telecaster.
Sure.
So many of our even recordings, I look back and think, oh, that's not a Junior, that's a this or whatever, But I don't know. I just love them all.
When did you first pick up a Junior then?
It was in '93.
Oh wow.
I moved to Atlanta. I graduated high school, moved to Atlanta, and I had owned a few Gibsons at that point, a 70s SG and a mid-80s Les Paul Custom, the Randy Rhoads Les Paul Custom, and then I actually I had bought a Studio Light, a tobacco Les Paul, which looking back now, I'm like, gross. But that guitar sounded good and it played great, so it was a tool.
Yeah.
And I went to a music store in Atlanta and I met a lifelong friend there, And he said, "What are you playing?" And I said, "Oh, it's this Les Paul." He goes, that sucks. You need a real guitar." And the old black Junior that my favorite guitar that I love so much. It's a 56. It's a reef in, obviously, but it was there on consignment, and it had belonged to Rick Richards from the Georgia Satellites, and then a couple other people after that, a couple of Atlanta guys. But that guitar, he pulled it down off the wall and he said, "Play this one." It's almost like he knew, and it literally, I bonded with that guitar instantly. I played a G chord and was like, "Oh God, this is what I want." And I think it was like $725, which I was like, "Who's got $725?" And he's like, "Just make payments." But then actually, he's like, "Surely you have something to trade, And so I put together a trade, and he's like, "And you could pay us the rest later." And so I did, and I've had it ever since. I didn't instantly go looking for another one because I didn't have another $725.
Of course, yeah.
But further on down the road, I wound up, I got a special first, and then sold it, and then bought another Junior and another Junior and the rest is.
And what do you find is the thing that when you pick up an instrument like this that you can tell that it's just resonating with you, or is that just it?
That's
you
it.
Actually you physically feel
it.
it.
It's resonant. Yeah. I have a new gold top. Tom Murphy at Gibson Custom Shop.
Yep.
I was talking to him.
Nice and cheap.
Not long ago. No. But he said, "Hey," I said, I would like a good gold top, And he said, "There's one in my office that is incredible. Just you just walk by and just rake the strings, and you're like, oh my God."
Yeah.
And that's right.
Gibson feel like they're in a bit of a better place at the moment.
They're in a great place.
There's some stuff, especially coming at that custom shop. I think the thing is, there's that period you're talking about there where you were first picking these up. I know it was a vintage instrument, but the studio would have been of the era. It was a little bit more simplified. Like you felt like you were getting more consistent quality from the Gibson USA, because obviously the custom shop was still, if not in business in its infancy. But you just really had the three models, you had your studio, your standard, your custom, you knew the price points, and really the difference was just like a bit of binding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They still had the same hardware, the same pickups, pretty much. Playability was quite similar, but then got kind of really complicated with your traditionals and this. I've forgotten all the different names.
Yeah.
Now it kind of feels a little bit like the custom shop is the real Gibson, but they're ironing that out more. I mean, dealing with them directly, and they've got a new CEO and all that sort of stuff. I mean, how do you feel Gibson is as a company right now?
They're great. I would say it's as exciting a time for them as there's ever been. They have people who respect and revere the history. What we all love about Gibson guitars, the golden era, so do they. Mark and Cesar and those guys, they live for that stuff like we do. And they all would sit around and laugh with us about some of the ideas that were bad, that came throughout the 80s and 90s, where it's like, what? No, I don't want robot tuners on my guitar. What? I mean, there are people that do. It definitely is a taste thing. There are people who would listen to us and go, what do you guys know? Shut up, it's your opinion. But quality-wise, I can speak to that, and every instrument I've picked up with this new regime is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was the same. I didn't think I would buy another instrument, to be honest, because it's kind of like, I feel like I got kind of priced out. But it was a 335 custom shop, Tom Murphy as well, and then it was like, got to have it, and then I was like, that's great that I'm it's bad that I'm now like I had to drop some cash, but the inspiration was still there, you know. But enough about that. But right, so playing the cruise 20 times, must have been some things that's gone wrong over the years.
Well, we've had more great times than not, and lots of great shows. That we've had some. There was one cruise that it never stopped raining, so all the deck shows were canceled.
Yeah.
They had to rearrange everything, and it was cold. That rain caught, so it was not a tropical experience at all. And these were all Caribbean cruises.
Mm.
This is our first time coming to the Mediterranean to cruise. Anyway, once the sea was so rough, it was on the Rock Boat, which is Sister Hazel. They're our buddies from Florida. They host. They were actually the first musically themed cruise with six man. They're the longest running, the Rock Boat. It literally was, no pun intended, that boat rocked so much that people were vomiting everywhere you looked. It was unbelievable. In fact, I looked over in our guitar tech. We were playing in the Stardust, and it was like, hold on, and we would all, roll to one side, and then like, oh, here we go, we're going this way. And they had everything was sandbagged down, all the drums and amps and stuff. And I looked over, and my guitar tech was in the garbage can. His legs were sticking straight out. He was throwing up just relentlessly. That was the roughest. I was not affected because I learned as a young man that I get seasick. So the first thing I do when my feet hit the boat is take anti-nausea medication.
Okay.
So I didn't get sick, but everybody else I knew did. Other than those, it's all been pretty gravy.
It'd be hard to top that anyway, having, projectile vomiting going on around
We
you.
had that time the sea was so rough the ship couldn't port, and it was a one port cruise. We would port in Cozumel, and the sea was so rough, and so the folks came over the intercom and said, okay, we're not going to be able to port, so nobody can go on an excursion. So what we're going to do is there was a percentage that they would deduct from their bar tab.
Right.
And you could hear it over the ship. It was big. And people were like, yay! So they just knew they could get just shit-faced without having to pay for it.
Just before I let you go, Charlie, do you feel... live music is such an important part of what you guys are all about, and do you feel like live music's in a good place right now?
I do. I was just telling you that I went to see the Stones at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, which is where the Atlanta Falcons play football, what we call football, and I think it holds 60,000. And we saw the Stones there, and it was great. And then they did one night. And then this week, Beyonce is playing 3 nights. So I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where people don't spend their hard-earned money to go hear music.
Absolutely.
Of whatever type.
Yeah, no, but it's beautiful to hear, and particularly beautiful to hear you guys live. We'll look forward to seeing you hitting the stage tomorrow, and when you're back in the UK when we get that announcement.
Yeah.
But thanks for taking some time, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.